All right, Steve Wood, recovered alcoholic. Welcome to the Great Reality Book Study on Big Book Compendium. Um, so I want to start by thanking Paige last week. She sat in for me. I was telling people I had quite a big Thanksgiving deal here, and we do a lot of stuff for recovery people, and went and fed the homeless afterwards and stuff. All sorts of fun, amazing stuff. So it was like there's no way I could have pulled off a book study. But she's in Canada; they don't have Thanksgiving now, so she was perfect to sit in. So last time, this is our fourth week on discussing working with others. The first week we started going from the title page all the way to the book and hitting the bullet points of working, where it talks about sponsoring, working with other people. What was sponsoring also. And we did that for 2 weeks, and then the third week was we got into working with others. This is the fourth week, and we're just getting into that. So I'm gonna start with a story, and this is one I heard. Irish guy I used to know uh, years ago. Met, I haven't seen him around in a long time, but he used to tell the story, and he would say there was a wolf who was the baddest of the baddest wolf, and he did things to others without you know thought or conscious thought. He was arrogant, ego driven, living on misdirected instincts, and he spent his years just wasting his life chasing after things he thought he wanted. What he didn't know was that he didn't have to live that way, and what he thought life was, turns out was just lies. And one day he came to this conclusion that he wanted to change his ways. He wanted to change who he was in the eyes of others. And soon his eyes were open to new opportunities. He started telling the truth, helping others solve their problems. And the work he was doing not only helped him, it helped others. Um, and he saw the good, and helping others was rewarding. Soon he thought of himself, you know, anything he felt bad about himself, guilt or anything, was dissolved. And when he started to let others in his life and help others, a new world began. And the moral is it's a silly story, but the moral is no matter how bad, big and bad you are, no matter what you've done, everyone is useful, and we can reach our full potential. Um, and walk in the light and help people. There's a great quote by, I just was reminded about, by Ralph Waldo Emerson. He says one of the most beautiful uh, conversations in life is that no one can sincerely try to help another without helping themselves. And we covered that last time. I mean, you think about this: is our purpose in life is to not just be happy; it is to be useful and available to other people. We always focus on what we need and what we want out here. Everything that we need to be happy is within us, but what brings that out is helping other people. And I said this before, we work on ourselves in order to help others, but also, I'm sorry, work on ourselves. How did I say it? We work on ourselves in order to help others, but we also work on others to help ourselves. And I always thought it was backwards. I always thought I'm doing this, you know, uh, I'm just going to help people and blah, blah, blah. But I never realized when I was helping others, I was helping myself. And then it took me a while after that to realize that also we help others to work on ourselves, by helping others, we work on ourselves, and helping others helps us basically. And it's, you know, within this altruistic realm, it's about, we get the chance to be things we never thought we were: a trusted advisor to another, a teacher, a motivator. I mean, the last thing I ever thought anyone would look at me as a teacher or motivator, passing on my knowledge and your knowledge to other people, you know, through a calmness and a genuine, honest of love. And even more than that, most important than that, is we found out what it's like to be available to others. We were never available. We're all, when we're caught up in selfish and self-seeking motives and everything like that, that's one thing. But you add that the alcoholic an obsession to it where it's always about getting that next drink or the next drug, you know. But what happens is we become our true altruistic self, and being a model example of living the selfless life. Because here's the truth: is we're hardwired to be altruistic beings. We're hardwired to be unselfish, and it's in our DNA. It's we're not, these beings, you know, we're not s- selfish beings trying to be selfless. We're selfless beings trying not to be selfish. Other way around. No matter how bad, we might feel, how much pain we have, or whatever our circumstances of life. So, when you get into that selfless service, it's the best medicine you can have, and it leads others to, we have the chance to lead others to encounters with God. We don't really. I'm not saying we lead people to God, but we point the way, and we'll talk about that tonight too. And when they're ready, we let them fly on their own. That's the most important thing. My grandpa used to always say that when you have a sponsee, one of the greatest gifts you can have is when you realize it's time to let them fly on their own. We're not there with them forever. All right. So we're on page 94. And I always say this is our secret. The program of action is, I say it's a secret because you could go to your first 5 meetings and never hear it mentioned, except when they mention it off the wall, whatever. But outline the program of action. So that's steps 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Explain how you made a self-appraisal at step 4. How you straighten out your past. That would be step 9. And why you are now in endeavoring to be helpful to him. Um, I love to explain the program of action. And I remember how I felt when it was broken down to me correctly and thoroughly, because it always seemed like there was something, like the people explaining at meetings that they did were like, they sound like a person talking about driving a car who never driven a car before, if you can imagine that. And I didn't realize that till later on. I go, wait a minute, there's a whole science behind this. And you know, I don't explain 429 too much before I take them through them, but I give them enough info on it, give them hope. What I do is right after I do the third step prayer, I got that 4-step packet I showed you guys a while back, and it's the check boxes and all that. I do the third step prayer with them, and I give them the 4-step packet, and right away I go to the resentment page, and I have them write down 2 resentments. I don't explain them how to do it. I say write down in this column and that column 2 resentments, and I walk them through. Do you think it's selfish? Do you think it's pride? Do you think it's this? And then the last column too. And the second they're done, I always ask them the one question: is that difficult? Because most of these guys are like told this is a painful, step 4 is this painful, it's an exhilarating process, and it's not. So I tell them, is that hard? I also tell them, as soon as they write down those 2 names, you just turn your whole life over to the care of God. And I explain to them to, take this packet home, fill out to the best of your ability. I tell them to call me when they complete step 4. If I don't, I usually give them, I say call me, and I always say I want you done with this by, if it's Tuesday, I want you done with it by Friday. But most of the time it doesn't really hit that well. Sometimes some guys get done in 2 days, but I don't help them write it. Someone's unmuted. Oh, if you can make it to where they can't unmute themselves, it'd be great. Um, but I don't, you know, write step 4 for them. Never have. I don't check the boxes. I would that's all stuff for step 5, even though that they have it all checked out. I'm there to improve the information. So I set a date with them to do step 5. I don't explain to them the 5th step to them before. I leave it to, like this mystery, because it's kind of like a play that plays out. You can't explain, here's what we're gonna do. You know, I don't, want you know, anything to put more fear into it, you know. You know, I explain them to, the most I can, and I explain them how, to do the hour after step 5, and which leads into 6 and 7. And I get together with them, like to say maybe the next day or 2 days later, and help them with their 8-step list. And I explain them how to make a proper amends. I've gone to them with to make a couple amends. I don't really stand over their shoulder when they do it. But if I need to give them examples of mine, I do. And then after that, I slowly work them into 10, 11, 12 within the next 2 weeks. And we continue to do inventory. Continue the same process I just explained. We just keep doing it. So back to the book. It is important for him to realize that your attempt to pass this on to him plays a vital part in your own recovery. Actually, he may be helping you more than you're helping him. That's why we just talked about that a minute ago. The first time I heard that, that kind of blew my mind. And every time anyone I sat down with and work with them, do this. I don't like to use the word work. To do the steps with them, it helps me more. You know, I'm pretty, since, I've been doing this for 24 years, and so the last 23 and a half years, I've been on a pretty deep spiritual journey since I've had the awakening. And we're always that much more ahead of the person we're taking to the steps. So they're just putting more gasoline into our fire when we're helping them, and then they'll do the same. And they're just beginning. It's very important to tell the sponsee that. And I don't tell them about I'm way ahead of you, but I tell them you're helping me more than I'm helping you, because it always, it gets them, to start to understand the importance of sponsoring and growth. Back to the book. Make it plain to him he is under no obligation to you, that you hope only that he will try to help others, alcoholics, when he escapes his own difficulties. I always say, give me your word on this. I'll help you if you help someone else. Suggests how important it is that he place the welfare of others ahead of his own. That's a pretty deep thing right there. That explain to that. Talking about a selfish, self-centered person. That's why it's better to bring it up to them after they've done 6 and 7, not anytime before that, because they're self-centered before that. You know, the place, because you just tell a guy right away, well, I'm going to teach you how to place the welfare of others ahead of your own. They're going to go, what? Says, make it clear that he is not under pressure, that he needed to see you again if he doesn't want to. You should not be offended if he wants to call it off, for he has helped you more than you've helped him. So, I don't try to talk him into doing the steps, or her into doing the steps. I don't sit there and say, no, hey, wait a minute, and chase them out the door. If they don't want to, they don't want to. I'm not going to be pushy and forceful and call them up 3 days later and say, have you changed your mind yet? No. If you know, if he'll reach out to you. Here's a problem. If I were to chase him out the door and talk to him and say, listen, man, you got to do these steps, you're going to die. Then if he does come back, I'm going to be the last person he wants to talk to. He'd say, that asshole? He says, I don't want to talk to him. Excuse my French, but he's just not ready yet. But most important is you plant a seed, and you never underestimate the power of a seed you plant, no matter what it is. Even you say hello to somebody, you plant a seed. But in recovery, I mean, there's a lot of seeds you can plant. That's why it's always important when you're in a meeting when you raise your hand, you know, say you're recovered alcoholic, say where you're at, talk about the steps. You know, don't be an example of the meetings, be an example of the steps. Back to the book. If your talk has been sane, which hopefully it is, quiet and full of human understanding, you have perhaps made a friend. So if you're doing the other thing, trying to talk him out of it, it's not going to be sane. It's not going to be quiet. It's not going to be full of human understanding, and you're not going to make a friend. So because you're pushy, you're chasing him away. Maybe you have disturbed him enough about the question of alcoholism, because what do we explain to them when we meet to them? Step 1. I've never understood people meet with a guy, they meet him at Starbucks, whatever, the first time, and They meet with him again, and I say, "What step are you guys on?" "I'm gonna do step 2 with him this time." I go, "What are you even talking about? This guy needs a life raft," you know? That's why bring step 1 to him because he might disturb him enough about the question of he was think about this. When they get there, they're still blinded by the obsession, but they're motivated to do something. So there's only a small window of opportunity. You have to take advantage of that opportunity, right? See what else says here. This is all to the good. The more hopeless he feels, the better. He is more likely to follow your suggestions. I mean, like I said, I mean, I've hammered home the allergy to people and say, and they say, that's me. And they're open to step 2 and they get blown away. And we show them page 55 in step 2. And you do a genuine third step prayer on your knees. And, they might even get tears in their eyes and say, this is the greatest thing. I can't wait to do this. I give them the 4-step packet and never hear from them again. And I get blocked from their phone because they weren't ready. They're just not ready to go further. They're not ready for a drastic self appraisal. They're not ready for transformation. They're not ready for new life. And what helps them talk them into that they're not ready even more is the obsession. But I'll bump into them, a few years down the road, maybe a few months down the road, and they say, "Hey, I'm ready," because they're desperate and they know that you have something. That's why you don't push them and make them upset. I mean, there's guys years later I bump into just the other day. I bumped into a guy over at the gas station. He walked up to me and just that same story I heard a million times. I'm like, who's this guy? I don't recognize him at all. He was awake, and then when he described himself to me, I go, oh my God, he didn't look like the same person anymore. But he said, man, when you explained the allergy to me years ago, it stuck, man. You wrecked my drinking when I went back out. You know, and yeah, this guy was on. I mean, this guy was well on his way. Maybe he was sponsoring and everything. Says your candidate may give you reasons why. So it describes it as a candidate here, which is kind of cool. Your candidate may give you reasons why he need not follow all of the program. He may rebel at the thought of a drastic house cleaning, which requires discussion with other people. Now, I can't tell you this stuff about me, and I'll tell you this much. I might go to prison if I tell you this stuff. That's what happens. It says, do not contradict such views. So don't tell the guy, no, 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 you got to do. I let them think whatever they need us to do. Tell him you once felt as he does. That's the best thing to say. Oh yeah, I've been there before. But you, but don't whether, but you doubt whether you would have made much progress had you not taken action. That's a very powerful thing to say. On your first visit, tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous. So I don't, even though in here I might say I love the AA fellowship. I love meetings. It's one of the favorite places for me to go. But I got my, frustrations with meetings. I'm not going to bring that up to the guy. I'm going to tell him about the Fellowship of Alcoholics Anonymous and what it did for me when I walked in and why I like going and why it's important for him to go is, now. If he shows interest, lend him a copy of of this book. Well, I don't lend him a copy of the book. I got books in my trunk, but I mean, like for instance, like before I got into continuous sobriety, I went to lots and lots of meetings, and I never did anything. Never took action. I was miserable, restless, irritable, discontent, very depressed, blinded, in fighting the upset by that obsession. Suicidal is a good word to use. Like very much, it would cross my mind a lot if not tried. But I share that because you can either stay feeling that way and think this is the best it gets, or you can try the steps. That's why we leave it up to them. You know, you will, you know, guaranteed you'll take more people to the first 3 steps than you will hear 5th steps. Guaranteed. I've had the luxury and the blessed, by God of hearing a lot of 5th steps, but I've still taken more people to the 3rd step than I ever will with all those 5th steps. Or, lots of them, lots of 3rd step prayers. So 95. Unless your friend wants to talk further about himself, do not wear out your welcome. Give him a chance to think it over. So don't push him. Don't chase him. Wait till he's ready. And, I mean, I used to get very offended when a guy would say, um, I would do that first 3 steps and give him his 4-step packet, and he would not call me back. And then the people who've been around a while doing the steps, the book thumpers would say, don't worry, it's not ready. And I got it eventually. I started to understand it. Back to the book. If you do stay, let him steer it. So if he, you know, if he wants to keep going, let him steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Sometimes that's just this paragraph right here. I kind of do it like the first talk before I get into step one, like maybe at first 10 minutes to sit down with the guy, but steer the conversation in any direction he likes. Um, Sometimes a new man is anxious to proceed at once, and you may be tempted to let him do so. This is sometimes a mistake. If he has trouble later, he might say you rushed him. It's very important to tell the person the time frame ahead of time. Like we're gonna do like here's where I expect us to be at. You know, once I get them to the first 2 steps and they can't wait to do the third step prayer, they just want to do it and they're ready. I explain them the time frames. Like here's how much, you know, here's what we'll be doing the third step, we're doing the fifth step, blah blah blah. But I tell them, I one thing I always tell them when I explain those time frames, you know, is how the early AAers left detox at their amends list in their hands. They didn't waste their time. I explained to them the authors of this book. Here's the way they did the steps, and this is the way I do the steps. Try to do it I say founder style. You know, it's it makes the most sense. Back to the book. You will be most successful with alcoholics if you do not exhibit any passion for crusader reform. Never talk down to an alcoholic from a moral or spiritual hilltop, the holier than thou person. Simply lay out the kit of spiritual tools for his inspection. That's all we're doing. Check it out. And earlier in the book, it says lay at their feet. Show him what they work with you. Offer him friendship and fellowship. Tell him that if he wants to get well, you will do anything to help. I always tell him that right away. You know, a lesson I learned quite a while back is, I mean, we talked about a while back in here was a simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. And notice it does not say ever in this book, hand them the simple kit of spiritual tools. It simply say, lays at their feet or give it for his inspection. We're not handing it to them. We're not saying, here you go, take it. You put it at their feet. You put it in front of them. And once we put it down in front of them and if they pick it up, just so much can happen. Kind of like I do with the 4-step. I give the 4-step packet to them. Then it's up to them. The ball's in their court. So I'm really fast with the first 3 steps, and I just look at him as a prospect or candidate. It's up to him if he wants to do that. And sometimes they'll call me back in a month later, and I thought the guy's long gone. But let's go back to the book here. If he's not interested in your solution, not interested in the steps, if he expects you to act only as a banker for his financial difficulties and nurse for his sprees, which, driving him to meetings and all this stuff, and I'm going to do this for you. I'm going to call me, any time of the night, stuff like that. So it says, if you're only there to do that stuff, nurse for his sprees, you may have to drop him until he changes his mind. He may do after he gets hurt some more. If he is sincerely interested and wants to see you again, ask him to read this book in the interval. So I'll say, read these pages. This is what we're studying. After doing that, he must decide for himself whether he wants to go on. He should not be, you say it again, remind us again, he should not be pushed or prodded by you. His wife or he should not be pushed or prodded by you, his wife, or his friends. I don't, get into that business, but if he is to find God, the desire must come from within. Remember, this is an inner journey. You can't take it like everyone has a different aspect of God. Some people follow, religion and stuff, and some just philosophies, and we're all different, and we all have our own conception of God. I'm not going to sit there and say, okay, here's my conception of God, and you better follow it. If he is to find God, the desire must come from within. Like 55, the great rally is deep down with this. You need to let him find that. It's an inner journey. Look what it says here. If he thinks he can do the job in some other way or prefers some other approach, fire him. No, it doesn't say that. It says encourage him to follow his own conscience. So if a guy says, I'm going to do this, I'm going to go to this church, I'm going to do this. I don't say don't do that stuff, but are you still want to do the steps with me? I don't care what they do. I mean, as far as outside the steps, we have no monopoly on God. This is a very important line. We merely have an approach that works with us, but point out that we alcoholics have much in common, and that you would like, in any case, to be friendly. Let it go at that. So do not be discouraged if your prospect does not respond at once. There's a funny story with this paragraph right here. It's an old Joe and Charlie joke. Some of you may have heard this. So a guy goes to the meeting, and he goes, and he's just like, he has a problem with his sex conduct. So the guy goes, go read page 69. So instead of paying rate 69, he reads this 96. And tell me if you want to be confused. Do not be discouraged. Your prospect is not responding at once. Search out another alcoholic and try again. You are sure to find someone desperate enough to accept with eagerness what you have to offer. That's the joke Joe and Charlie used to always tell. But aside from that, said we find it a waste of time to keep chasing a man who will not or will not work with you. If you leave such a person alone, you may soon be convinced that he cannot recover by himself. And this is very important right here. To spend too much time on any one situation, which I'm going to rephrase it, to spend too much time on one alcoholic is to deny some other alcoholic an opportunity to live and be happy. One of our fellowship failed entirely with the first Hapless and Prospect, first 6 prospects, Bill. And he often says if he had continued to work with them, he might have deprived many others who have since recovered. One thing I want to say is, there's no reason to convince a person who doesn't want to, do this. There are people out there who do. I'm always prepared that a person is not going to do the work. I hate to say it like that. I don't think negative. My mind says this person is going to do the work, but I'm also prepared what direction it goes. That's one reason why I always raise my hand. I never say my plate's full. I've had 8 guys before on the first step. It's all at the same time, and I work them all individually, sometimes all at once. But I always have known if I have 4 guys I'm working with, if it's that many, which is a lot, at the same, in the first few steps, I got many guys I help in the continuous steps, and a few guys lined up on step 4 right now. But when I do the first 3 steps, I'm just gonna stick with that. If I have 4 or 5 guys on those first 3 steps, I would say 1 or 2 is gonna probably do their 5th step. That's usually what seems to happen. Sometimes all of them will, but the thing is with that frame of mind and knowing that, I'm always trying to find the next person that's available. And why would I want to say no to anyone that walks up to me? And it's just, I guess, can't say no to people. Suppose now you are making your second visit to the man. It seems more like the 5th visit, but I don't know. You're just making your second visit to the man. He has read this volume and says he is prepared to go through with the 12 steps of the program recovery. having had the experience yourself, you can give him much practical advice. Let him know you're available if he wishes to make a decision, and then tell a story. But do not insist upon it if he prefers to consult someone else. Exactly. I had one guy fire me one time, and he got my friend to sponsor him, and he goes, "Yeah, that guy Steve wanted me to write a 4-step my whole life and everything." And the guy went on for like 15 minutes ripping me apart and the steps, and the guy looks at him and he goes, "I'm gonna have you do the same thing he told you." But look at this. So this is advice that's good for anyone we deal with in recovery. Very important. Very important. He may be broken homeless. If he is, he may try to help him getting a job, make a couple calls or give him a little financial assistance. I don't really think that's the best idea, but you should not deprive your family or creditors of money they should have. And this happens. Um, there's a little more in this. Perhaps you will want to take him into your home for a few days. I don't do that at all. I say don't do that. I mean, but um I've had some experiences with that, good and bad. But be sure to use at your discretion. He's certain he will be, be certain he will be welcomed by your family. Don't, oh, this, by the way, this guy's saying with this, no, and that he is not trying to impose for money, connections, and shelter. So when we were running around the last 2, 3 years, what do we always want? Money, connections, and shelter. Call it hustling, right? Money, connections, and shelter. So most alcoholics, addicts get to recovery, right? They still have that frame of mind. And look what it says, permit that and you only harm him. So if you're giving him money, if he's imposing you for it, if he's just there for money, connections, and shelter, and you let him stay there, permit that you only harm him. You'll be making it impossible for him to be insincere. You'll be aiding to his destruction rather than his recovery. That's why it harms him that way. And I had a guy, one of my first roommates in recovery, great guy. And I came home one night and he had this guy from the meeting staying at the house. And oh my God, I mean, this guy, I mean, I was pretty wild looking, but this guy looked like he was straight off the homeless, aspect, and nothing against homeless people at all. But the guy, I knew him from the meetings. I knew he was kind of a hustler. I know he had no intention to the steps, and I know that he was just looking for a place to stay. And all had to explain that guy, man, you're hurting him. He got really angry with me when I said that. Um, I mean, how many times did we, find a place to crash for a while on, at grandma's house on the couch, and even when we were out there. I mean, think about it. We get 3 hots in the cot, you know, 3 hot meals in the cot. People look at that, a little hustle, a little money, you know, and we harm a lot of people doing that, and that's why it's very important for us not to do that with let other people do that to us. Um, Look, it says never avoid these responsibilities, but be sure you are doing the right thing if you assume them. Helping others, foundation, stone, and recovery. So remember we have the arch, and on the right side of the arch, the bottom 2 corners are the 11th step and the 12th step. It's a foundation, stone, recovery. It's a foundation because it connects to the foundation. So full circle, almost like all of a sudden you reach the foundation again because you've reached the foundation stone. So that's why it's a foundation stone of recovery. It connects to it's like another cornerstone. Um, so here, this is a great description of the altruistic life. I kindly act once in a while isn't enough. You should act as a good Samaritan every day. Every day. You know what the Good Samaritan is. You've heard that story a million times, right? You should act as a good Samaritan every day, if need be. Now, can I just be if I don't do the steps, can I be the Good Samaritan? I'm just gonna be a dry drunk. That's not a Good Samaritan. I get turned into the Good Samaritan automatically without having to do it. if need, you should act if need be. It may mean the loss of many nights' sleep, great interference with your pleasures, interruptions to your business. It may mean sharing your money in your home, which I'd again don't recommend that. Counseling frantic wives. That's what these guys had to do a lot of back then, and relatives. But it happens that sometimes. Immutable trips to the police courts, which called drug court nowadays. You know, sometimes with the DUI courts too. Sanitariums, been there, checked into there, and been there, and going the other and help bring someone there. Um, and hospitals, jails, and asylums. And really today it's more like drug court, DUI court, 50. The reason why the 5150 hospitals, the asylums are important now is because there's less and less detoxes. So when a guy calls me up and goes, "There's no detox," I say, "Call the 5150 ward," and they check themselves into the ward and they get the detox there, and they'll let them detox there now, which is good. And then we know jails and rehab, basically they're saying asylums. Your phone may jingle at any time during the day and night, which it does. Your wife may sometimes say she is neglected. I wouldn't say she's ever done that with me. A drunk may smash your furniture in your home. It's never happened, but that's why I'm trying to go that way. Or burn your mattress. You may have to fight him if he's violent. That happened when I went to a 12-step call one time with a guy, but it was three of us there and he was out of his mind. Sometimes you have to call a doctor or administrate sedatives. Take the guy to the doctor before in the emergency room. Another time you may have to send for the police or the ambulance. Never called the police on the guy, but I had to call the ambulance before. Occasionally you will have to meet such conditions. I mean, the whole thing, this becoming way of life. I mean, I've worked with guys on Super Bowl Sunday because they come first and I'm committed to them. I've heard fist steps on Christmas Eve. I've left the dinner table at birthday parties and kids' birthday parties and stuff because a guy calls and I realize that they need to talk to me. And I give my wife that kind of wink, like if I realize nothing important, then I'll call him back. But I give her that wink, kind of like I need to talk to this guy right now. It's like a business call coming in. Um, but my wife's never questioned me working with guys or hearing fist steps because she knows what she's going to get back from it, you know, and what I'm going to get back as well. What I mean is that she's got a much more calmer person at the home when I'm sponsoring. She'll come up to me when I'm in one of my moods. Says, "When's the last time you heard a fist step? When should you take a guy to the steps?" Because she knows, you know. I can tell you because I sponsor. My house is a much more calmer house. I because I sponsor, I'm a better husband, a better dad because I've learned to be more explanatory towards things and straight to the point. But I owe so much to carrying the message. Again, people rise to detoxes in the middle of the night, like I mentioned on there, and because it's what we do. And the coolest thing is when a guy looks into your eyes and says, "Thank you." No, I say no. I look back and I say, "No, thank you." And, that's what you say. You've helped me more. And there's that moment that I mean gets me emotional. It's like when they look into your eyes and if nothing's really said, and the light that has been lighting you is now their lights are on as well, and you see it. You just see, the eyes of the window of the soul lights have turned on, not the hollow lights anymore. Sometimes that might happen in front of you during a fifth step. Look what else says. We seldom allow an alcoholic to live in our homes for long at a time. It is not good for him. It is sometimes creates serious complications of the family. Yeah, it would. Though an alcoholic does not respond, there is no reason why you should neglect his family. You should continue to be friendly to them. This you got to remember. These guys work really close to the family, so some of this is kind of irrelevant. But the family should be offered your way of life. Should they accept and practice spiritual principles, there's much better chance the head of the family will recover. That's, before Al-Anon and all that. And even though he continues to drink, the family will find life more bearable. So back in those days, when you went to like an early Akron, a lot of the meetings were just at Bob's house and, well, and other guys' house too, but just, yeah, all meet there. And the wives are always with him. And the wives would go to one room and the guys would go to another room or even up to the attic to do third step prayers type things. And that's really kind of like when the first Al-Anon started. And, and Smith was very much doing what it talks about here, you know, that even if and some of the women that showed up to those groups, husbands have gone way back out. We're still drinking, but they came back to meet with Anne and her friends, and that was kind of like the predecessor to Al-Anon. Back to the book, for the type of alcoholic who is able and willing to get well, little charity in the ordinary sense of the word is needed or wanted. The man who cried for money and shelter before conquering alcohol are on the wrong track. We went there already. Yet do go to great extremes to provide each other with these very things. When such an action is warranted, this may seem inconsistent, but we think it is not. It is a matter. It is not the matter of giving that is the question, but when and how to give. And that's why we have this paragraph in this book. And this book says like this: that often makes the difference between failure and success. The minute we put our work on a service plane, the alcoholic commences to rely on our assistance rather than God. Very important there. So if we put ourselves on this, I'm going to help you with this and help you with this and help you with this, they're depending upon you. Or I'm telling them to call me every day at 5 a.m. He clamors for this or that, claiming he cannot master alcohol until his material needs are cared for. Nonsense. Some of us have taken very hard knocks to learn the truth. Job or no job, wife or no wife. We simply did not stop drinking so long as we. This is a very important line, my most important line in this whole paragraph, whole chapter. We simply did not stop drinking so long as we placed dependence upon other people ahead of our dependence upon God. Now, I've gotten guys from other sponsorship lines and who want to call me every day at 5 or 6 a.m. Well, that's what I did for 2 years with the guy. And I'm like, please don't. These are common things you hear all the time. Remember, this book says, about that line, dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. We will not stop drinking. And remember, it says human power failed us. We need a power greater than ourselves. We must have dependence upon God, not us. You look around the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. These people say, "You people keep me clean," and I gotta be at this meeting. I gotta be there. And I always tell people this. You know, if I couldn't stop myself from drinking, my human power failed me. How is your human power going to help me? Dependence upon God. And read that line again. We simply did not stop drinking so long as we place dependence upon other people ahead of dependence upon God. Look at that. It's very important what they say there. We say meeting makers make it. You people keep me sober and all that stuff like that. Just think about what it said. Take that in. You might think I'm totally off and wrong, but you know, again, this is not a we program. It's a God program. I hear people say it's a we program. It's a God program. Back to the book. Burn the idea into the consciousness of every man, doesn't leave anyone out, that he can get well regardless of anyone. The only condition is that you trust God and clean house. Trust God, do 4 through 9. Now, the domestic problem. Hold on a second. My computer went weird for a second. Now, the domestic problem. There may be divorce, separation, just strained relations. When your prospect has made much reparation, he can to his family, maybe make amends, and has thoroughly explained to them new principles by which he's living. He should proceed to put those principles into action at home. I hope he does. Yeah, I've heard people say, you know, I make a living amends with my family. You know, I would say there's no living amends to family. You make amends to them face to face. You know, that's what they're talking about here. And what they're really talking about, when, for instance, I'm making living amends, it's just practicing the principles in all your affairs. You do that. We make face to face amends. That's how we can make it right. Back to the book. That is, if he is lucky enough to have a home, though his family may be at fault in many respects, he should not be concerned about that. He should concentrate on his own spiritual demonstration. Argument, fault finding are to be avoided like the plague. In many homes, this is a difficult thing to do, but it must be done if any results are expected. It persisted in for a few months. The effect on the man's family is sure to be great. The most in incompatible people that discover they have a basis upon which they can meet. Little by little, the family may see their own defects and admit them. They can be discussed in an atmosphere of hopelessness and hopelessness. I sponsor guys and I go to their homes and they're like dressed nice, looking good, like overly dressed for meetings, and they're overly friendly. And you go to their homes and they're nothing knocking, but they're just in turmoil. And they talk down their wives, they talk down their kids, and you're like, oh, it's not the kid's fault, not the wife's fault. It's what they put them through. And I see that, and I thinking, I'm going there because he's such a nice guy, and he's like already told me how mean his wife has been to him in the past, and his kids don't listen to him, and you go home and he just like treats them like garbage. And I'm like going, this guy's blind. But they're conditioned to his behavior, and then he does his steps and he changes his ways. And guess what happens? They change. Because you got to take into consideration that you damage some people with who you're drinking, but not your drinking, you're thinking, what you say to people and how we say it when we're we take into that. Yet we're the innocent victims, is what we say. After they have seen tangible results, the family will perhaps want to go along. These things will come to pass naturally and in good time provided. However, the alcoholic continues to demonstrate that he can be sober, considerate, and helpful, regardless of what anyone says or does. Of course, we all fall much below this standard many times, but we must try to repair the damage immediately, lest we pay the penalty by a spree. If there be divorce or separation, there should be no undue haste for the couple to get together. The man should be sure should be should be sure of his recovery. I mean, doing the steps. The wife should fully understand his new way of life. If their old relationship is to be resumed, it must be better at basis since the former did not work. Very important what they're saying there, right? So this means a new attitude and spirit all around us. Sometimes it is the best interest of all concerned that the couple remain apart. Obviously, no rule can be laid down. Let the alcohol continue his program day by day, and when the time for living comes together, it will apparent for both parties. And it happens. This happens. There's people in here I know very closely who spent years apart from their wives or girlfriends and are back together. Let no alcoholic say he cannot recover unless he has his family back. You hear that all the time. I've heard that before. This is just isn't so. In many cases, the wife will never come back for one reason or another. Remind the prospect. Here it's going to say it again. Remind the prospect his recovery is not dependent upon other people, it's dependent upon his relationship with God. It says it again there. Hmm. It says it again. Remind the prospect his recovery is not dependent upon other people. We're not here to depend upon other people. It's dependent upon a relationship with God. We've seen men get well, those families, and not returned at all. We have seen others slip when the family comes back to sin. I had one guy, he was permanently disabled. His wife was made a lot of money, and we did the fifth step. And he said to me, I'm paraphrasing this because I don't want to say exactly what he said, but basically, how can I say it? It's so many words. He said, you know what? Like he was holding on to a dead marriage because he was worried about what would happen to his life if he didn't have her job and the money coming in. And he relapsed soon after that. He came back and then eventually he realized, you know what? He swallowed his pride and moved into my friends as a roommate. And now he's turned his life completely around. This is very important. So it's very important stuff. We cannot put family ahead of our recovery. Let's go back and remind ourselves we have a deadly disease. We have an allergy, we have an obsession, right? And that doesn't care about reason, doesn't care about your kids, doesn't care about your wife, your husband. You will use if you don't put recovery first. We want to watch, you know, we watch this all the time. Guys do the three-step shuffle, like Jim, the guy that put whiskey in his milk. The first three steps, and they get the girl back, they get the family back, they get the job back. Wait a minute, my life looks good out here. I don't need to do the steps. You know, again, we had those words in there. Dependent on our relationship with God, reliance upon God, right? It says both you and the new man must walk day by day in the path of spiritual progress. That's pretty deep. If you persist, remarkable things will happen. There's some promises in here. When we look back, we realize that the things which came to pass, we put ourselves in God's hands, not our own hands. In God's hands, were better than anything we could have planned. Amen. Follow the dictates of a higher power, and you will presently live in a new, wonderful world, no matter what the present circumstances. Again, it talks about God's hands, dependent upon God, not dependent upon other people, not dependent on the people at the meetings and all that stuff like that, right? Because I just know the most rewarding thing I've ever done is sitting down in front of another person and doing this work. Nothing like in a fun like hearing a fifth step and watching that person change. I mentioned before, the lights turn on right in front of you. That you get to see their ideas, emotions, attitudes change and cast out, and new sets of ideas and emotions, and they get excited about stuff that you already know about, but I just let them tell me about it. To see God awaken them, it's an honor to be that person hearing a person's fifth step. It's an honor that the person's going to say to me, "I'm going to tell you something I never told anyone before." Wow, me? It's an honor when a person says thank you, but because they've helped me more. You know, I mean, a person who barely knows me is going to trust me with his darkest stuff. Their dirt. I mean, so blows my mind. That person would never do that unless they saw something in peace in me. And the same exact thing you see in the person when they make a few amends. You know, when I sit down with the guy, I get spiritually paid, and if I don't, I pay the price. I just know that. When working with a man and his family, you should take care not to participate in their quarrels, like in their business. You like, oh, here's what you need to tell your wife about this. Here's what you just, stay out of it. You may spoil your chance of being helpful if you do that. But urge upon a man's family that he has been very sick and should be treated accordingly. You should warn against any arousing of resentment and jealousy. It's a good idea. You should point out that his defects of character, his instincts, are not going to disappear overnight. I mean, he's not going to just all of a sudden not be a jerk right away. Show him that he is entered upon a period of growth. Ask him, remember, when they are impatient, the blessed fact of his sobriety. You know, I don't work with a person in their family, but I do get to see things turn around. If you've been successful in solving your own domestic problems, tell the newcomer's family. I'm not gonna say family. I tell the newcomer about it, how that be accomplished, and I don't really get to know the family because I mean it's not like it was back then. And this way, you can set them on the right track without becoming critical of them. The story of how you and your wife settled your difficulties is worth any amount of criticism. You know, I don't give guys relationship advice. I do share with them how I overcome difficulties in my relationships. And when usually it comes up in a fifth step, and I explain how a relationship with God helps me. Well, helps me relationship my I never knew what relationships were until I had a relationship with God. And I went, this is what a relationship means. So a relationship with God helps me with my relationships in my life. Very important. So we covered the next few pages before, so we're not going to do it now. We covered a few like last month. We were talking about spiritually fit. If you weren't there, you can go back and read it. But we're gonna jump to 102, and we're almost done. 102. Your job is to be at a place where we may be of maximum helpfulness to others. Remember, it says our real purpose is to fit ourselves in maximum service to God and people about us. Your job is to be at a place where we maximum helpfulness to others. So never hesitate to go anywhere if you can be helpful, not just meetings, not just sponsoring, anywhere. You should not hesitate to visit the most sordid spot in errand on such an errand. Think of the dirty rehabs that you know about, the dirty detoxes. You know you're supposed to be there helping. Keep on the firing line of life with these motives, and God will keep you unharmed. You know, when I started working with others, I mean, about 3 months, 4 months, and I never looked back. You know, I started doing the steps 24 years ago, and I said, you know, I do not want, to get. I don't want to get in line and get free food from churches ever again, like I used to when I was hustling. Because I used to get vouchers from churches and free food and go sell it. I never want to see the people I used to, use with and run with. I never want to set foot in jails and prisons and rehabs and detox ever again. And here's the truth. In the last 24 years, where do I spend most of my times? At jails, prisons, rehabs, detoxes. Because it's where I bring the message to. I go back to the churches where I got free food. Number one, I had to make an amends. And number two is well, here's the truth. I do the hustle for the vouchers and go sell them, like $100 voucher. And not proud of that, but it's what I did. And I went back and made amends. And they said, well, you can do service for us. And one church in where I used to live, I did it for almost 5 years with them. I just never wanted to stop. I loved it, because I saw every person that came to get food, I saw myself in them. And even if they were hustling, you know, the dark past great possession we have, we can save lives with it, you know. As far as like shunning and pushing away, rejecting the people that we used to use with or drink with, you know, never do that. Why? Why would I not? I mean, they tell me in rehab, stay away from those people. But if I go up to my friend and say, listen, you goddamn drunk, never come near me again, is he gonna ask me for help one day? I go by my friends all the time who's in not the next city over, and there's a few of them. I see in front of their house. I'll walk up, knock on their door. I know they're all on dope, and some of them have called me years later, and I mean, over time, and said, "Hey, I need to get clean." It's very deep stuff. I'm going to read a quote by this is a quote by Emmett Fox, and this is pretty deep. I don't know where I got this from, but it's good. The quickest way to spread the truth is by living the life yourself. Then people will notice the change in you, and they will see improved health and prosperity in your life and happiness shining through your face. They will come around of their own accord, begging you to share your secret. There it is right there. The quickest way is to spread the truth by living the life yourself. I don't have to tell people, oh, you got to do these steps. They know. They know. I just went to their house and made amends to them all. You know, when I first got sober. Doesn't think that they know I'm doing something different? I mean, service is one of the most important things that makes no sense until we do it. It's like telling a person um, what it's like to be in love and they've never been in love before. There's nothing like, carrying this message, but they're not going to know until they do it. Look at this. Many keep liquor in their homes. We often need it to carry green recruits through severe hangovers. Some of us will serve it to our friends, provide they're an alcoholic. Like people can drink in my house as long as they're not alcoholic. I mean, Thanksgiving, we didn't have any booze in the house this year, but sometimes we will. But my wife has bunco at her house, and some of her friends drink. And we had one person that got a little out of hand, and one time, and my wife apologized because I had no idea. And that woman's, is not allowed in her house anymore because I'm pretty sure she's alcoholic. But I don't. People can come over and drink, and as long as they're not alcoholic, you know. And my wife drinks. Maybe one drink a year, you know, and there's booze that sits in my cupboard in there, and she gives saves them for Christmas gifts to people. But some of us think, this is back to the book, so some of us think we should not serve liquor to anyone. We never argue this question, which is, I'm not gonna argue that question. I don't prefer to have it in my house. I don't stock up on it. The Dr. Bob and great Dr. Bob story, and I read this in one of his books, and his son Schmitty, I went to a seminar with him one time years ago, and he told the story how Ann Smith came home one day and her heart sank because they had three people living in their house, and on top of the refrigerator was a big bottle of scotch. And she's like, pulls it. Her heart sunk. She was freaked out. She's like, oh my God, he's drinking. And she says, no, I'm not drinking. She says, why do you have booze in the refrigerator? She's all, if they can't be around it now, they'll never be able to be around it. How can they live in the world? How can they go to the store? How can they go here and there? So Dr. Bob would always, I mean, if you did that at Clean Summer House now, they would fire you to kick you out. Put a bottle on top of the refrigerator, see if they can handle seeing it, because people don't think that way anymore. That's what, as Dr. Bob's, idea, you know. Um, we feel that each family, in the light of their own circumstances, ought to decide for themselves. We're careful never to show intolerance or hatreds of drinking as an institution. Experience shows us that such an attitude is not to be helpful to anybody. I never really understand when you hear at meetings people go, I hate drinking, I hate drugs, and they slam other drinkers. And I'm not afraid to say I like drinking. I like it, just didn't like me back. You know, I'm not saying it was a good thing. You know, um, they slam. Oh, that guy's just a drunk, and they slam ones who drink. It's like, I mean, you hear guys slam, politicians and family members of politicians, and they go, "Well, wait a minute." It's like this person's always gonna be a dirtbag. Wait a minute. Are you part of recovery fellowship that you see change? It can happen. People will slam people they just don't like, and they say stuff like that. It just blows my mind. Every new alcoholic every new alcoholic looks for this spirit among us and is immensely relieved when he finds we are not witch burners. Thank God. A spirit of intolerance might repel alcoholics whose lives would have been saved. So a lot of people have been chased away. I've seen it happen. Had it not been for such stupidity, we would not even do the cause of temperate drinking any good. For not one drinker in 1,000 likes to be told anything about alcohol by one who hates it. Very important. Someday we hope Alcoholics Anonymous will help the public to better understand the realization of the gravity of the alcohol problem, and it has. But we shall be little use if our attitudes is one of bitterness, hostility. Drinkers won't stand for it. And look at this. After all, our problems were just our own making. Bottles were simply a symbol. Alcohol is just a symptom of our problem because we have stopped fighting anything or anyone we have to. I used to ask, why me? Why was I cursed with this life? Why am I still alive? I'm talking about when I was in and out of AA for years, to get 2 or 3 months. And I started working with others this time around, 24 years ago. I had like 5 months and I never looked back. And I believe God has a plan for me, for you, for all of us, is to help others. And my goal each day when I wake up, my goal in every book study I do, every sponsee I talk to, but every time I wake up every day, is that one person. If I just find one person their way home. Like this book study, if one person, all I care about is if one person, if I help one person, that's all that matters. Um, that's the way I look at meetings too. There's gotta be one person in here that I can help. If I know I've done my job. But that's the beauty of sponsorship. I can because I continue to experience the magnificent reality of the 12 steps every day. I continue to see it all. Passing on to others is, again, I don't know how many times I can say it's a highlight of my life, my greatest accomplishment. Taking it to and watch the person get results. It's so awe-inspiring. We know when we haven't sponsored enough guys. We know we haven't heard a fifth step in a while because we're not inspired. I start going and telling myself, oh, you know what? Where did my motivation go? Your motivation's gone because you're not sponsoring anybody, and helping others saved my life and it keeps me motivated. I truly believe that God helps those who help others. And as for my sponsor, I've never tried to thank, them for all the time. I tried to, for the wisdom, the caring, the encouragement. It's I'm not going to exaggerate, but that person helped save my life. And you always say it's not me, it's God. Every time. It's not me. And I said to people too. I do not know where I would be today without this person's strong, selfless, honest, giving person. And I fell in love with sponsor because I fell in love with my sponsor. That's just the way I look at life. Because you start to love everybody and you realize, wow, this person's passing on this love to me. But he helped me not work through my resentments, but see what created them. And that's the approach. But he always would say, he never would say, let's do the steps. He would say, if I call him up for some thing, all angry, he'd say, let's talk, and he would tell me the truth with love. I need to hear it. He never made me call him every day because he wanted me to be reliant upon God. And he'd always joke, you can be, my sponsor used to tell me, you can be relied upon me, but I don't think you can, and take me with you wherever you go, but I don't think you can afford to take me to Hawaii. you know, it's why he always say, God becomes your sponsor, and I'm just here to listen to you and walk you through that, continue walking through this. The greatest thing he ever told me was, I will hear your fifth step if you hear another's. And then I said this before, it's the longest promise I ever kept. And you hear people all the time say this is a selfish program. And a spiritual lifestyle can never be selfish lifestyle. Otherwise, it's not spiritual. The spiritual lifestyle is built on the foundation of helping others. And no amount of fortune, fame, success, beauty, or intelligence will ever give you the sense of gratification and the sense of that real purpose in life you receive from helping another person. That purpose, you feel like you have purpose, and you know your role in the universe. You know, you know Who am I? What am I? And why you're here. You know exactly why you're here. I mean, think about it. Most of us should be dead in here. How many of us had a friend that died? If someone died right now at drinking, someone just OD'd, boom, boom. Why are we all still here? We're miracles because God had a plan for us. And that's who to help whenever and whoever we can. And never question it. You will receive life that you never imagined. You know, I was gonna wrap it up, but I think I want to read. I think I want to go over this with you guys because I want to pass this on to you guys. So, the 10 most important things to remember within sponsorship. If you have a book, you can sponsor, right? Two, through your own personal victory, you have the recipe to help others. Three, if you do not pass the message to others, you will lose whatever you gained. Four, to overcome low self-esteem, you must do esteemable acts. There's no esteemable acts like sponsoring. Your dark past is not just a key to the future, to your future, but also the future in life and happiness for others. The condition for permanent recovery is not being sponsored, it's sponsoring. And the only unsuccessful sponsor is someone who does not sponsor. And it's not the messenger, it is the message. We will never really come to truly have a relationship with God until we take others to the steps. And lastly, we cannot play God because only God can awake the dead. Next week, bring a notebook because what we're going to do is I'm going to take you guys through all the bullet points I get. So, like, I'm going to take you to doctor's opinion and say, here's why I show out a doctor's opinion for step one. Here's why I take people through step two. Here's why I take people through step three. And I'm going to do it the same way my sponsor sat me down and says, here's these bullet points. Because I didn't do the steps line by line, you know, out of the big book. I did them bullet points because I was on borrowed time. And I did my sponsees and I take them to line by line later, or they come to this, you know. People have asked me for that for a while, and I said, "We'll do. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording, and we'll talk."